Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Unless you're seeing my face for the first time, in which case, hi, I'm Sav, and this is my channel where I talk about Lolita fashion, sewing, and just general adventure and blogging content. Really quickly before we get into this video, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for all of the love and support on my wardrobe tour. I was super nervous to start YouTube and I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but it seems to have gone really well so far, and I'm really excited to create more content for you guys this year. But that's all I have for you right now, so let's get into the video. So, the year is 2014. Angelic Pretty is on a roll. It is towards the end of the sweet boom, but we're still going pretty strong at this point. Although some people would argue that the sweet boom ended before 2014, I think I'd argue that 2014 was the last full year of the sweet boom. And I think that, my reasoning for that will seem pretty solid by the end of this video, hopefully. Um, but let's talk about why 2014 was so big for Angelic Pretty. So 2014, as far as AP releases go, was a huge year. We got really iconic prints this year, such as Mercator Antique Shop. We got, Melody Toys, Melty Ribbon Chocolate, and we also got Cream Cookie Collection, which, as everybody knows, I'm sure by now, that is a really, really iconic sweet print. I don't know that I know any Sweet Lolitas who don't own that one. Um, but it was a huge year for them. They were on a roll, but unfortunately, there were a couple of prints that just missed the mark with the community. And today we're going to talk about one of those prints, and that print is Lucienne Dream. So, to talk about Lucienne Dream, let me give you a little background info about it. As far as like the release info goes, it comes in 4 colorways. There is a pink and white, a black and white, a brown and white, and a blue and white. The print features bird cages. They are screen printed onto the chiffon. They are all screen printed in gold except for the brown colorway where the screen printing is actually in brown. So there are several pieces that go with this. I mean, it was 2014, and this was actually a very standard AP release, except for the fact that this one actually had more pieces than Cream Cookie Collection did, which seems so strange to think about now. But this release included an OP, a JSK, a skirt, a blouse, a cut sew, OTKs, a head bow, a birdcage novelty headdress, and lace gloves. And as far as colorways go, everything comes in those 4 black, pink, brown, and blue colorways for the most part, with the exception of the birdcage headdress, I believe the gloves, and I believe the blouse and the cut sew. Those all have ivory options as opposed to a brown, and I don't think any of them have blue. I don't remember. I'd have to look again, but either way. Um, and so, as far as like AP prints go, it's pretty basic. But we'll get into that in just a minute. And yeah. So, why is Lucienne Dream not popular? Coming from a year where so many extremely popular, still iconic to this day releases came out. I think that a lot of it has to do with the print itself. The print is super basic. It's not over the top like a lot of the other prints from that year. I mean, you look at Mercator Antique Shop, there's a lot going on visually with that dress. And, Cameo Window's another one. Even Melody Toys is quite over the top compared to this one. And I think that's why this one, and even Victorian Tassel, which was another release from this year that has now gained kind of an iconic status with some people in the community. I think that's the reason that these two particular prints fell through the cracks and weren't very popular. Um, as far as like the print goes, it is quite literally just bird cages going around and around the bottom of this dress. So it's not anything crazy. There's not like a cutesy motif, really. It's very much more of a classic type print, and I don't think anybody would argue with me on that. It's definitely not like cutesy toys or sweet foods, anything that would be super popular with sweet Lolitas, who were the main demographic of Angelic Pretty's work at the time. So it does seem kind of strange that they put out a dress like Lucienne Dream in a year where they released so many iconic sweet pieces. Um, Although, Mercator Antique Shop is definitely not necessarily a sweet piece either. It leans more classic and gothic itself, but it's still quite over the top. And I think that right there is the main reason that this print isn't popular. Um, the other thing about it, and I saw this on a blog, I want to say it was Luna Rain's blog, the cuts are a little bit strange. They're not very over the top either. They're also very basic. And for a lot of people, that tends to be an issue. And I think where Luna Rain was coming from at the time of writing the blog post, I'm not sure if they had seen this dress in person, but I do know that the stock photos make it look very strange and kind of frumpy. But in person, the cuts are really not bad. I have the JSK cut, and I find that it's very princessy. It's got these kind of princess seams across the front with this really nice, um, like pink trim. And then, of course, there is the corset lacing in the front that is just purely decorative. It doesn't actually serve a purpose. In the case of this dress, I'm sure with some other dresses it does. Excuse me, this one is not one of them. Um, but it's not as like fancy and detailed as other dresses. I mean, I have Mercator Antique Shop as well. You guys saw the bodice on that one. It's very, very over the top. Whereas this one is just kind of, it's kind of basic. Um, they also mentioned in their comments on their critique um, that the skirt itself is kind of strange, and not for the shape, but because of the placement of the bird cages. And I completely agree with where they're coming from on this, and to this day, I've not decided how I feel about that fact. But there's like this huge, huge gap between these two bird cages on the front, and then there's like no gap between the two on the side. And it's kind of weird. I don't know why AP did that. I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or if that was just something that happened in production. Um, but I can see where Luna Rain's blog was coming from, talking about, you know, it kind of misses the mark for what AP was doing at the time. Because even though prints like Cream Cookie Collection have fairly basic cuts also, um, the print is so cute, it's kind of easy to overlook that fact. Whereas with this dress, there's so little going on with the print that you can't help but notice the shape of the dress being just a little bit like shy of being really, really nice. Um, but I do feel like that's also one of its strong suits, and we'll get to that in a minute with my final thoughts on this dress. But the other thing I wanted to bring up and talk about was the live journal commentary I saw about it. So a lot of people commented on this one post, and I, for the life of me, cannot find it, but I'm sure if I do, I'll link it in the description for you guys if you want to go see an old piece of EGL lore. Um, they were talking about how the dress just doesn't do it for them. They're like, this is really kind of ugly. And that seems to be the general consensus I see from people who have either A, never seen this dress in person, or B, had never really heard of this dress at this point. Like, I know there's several people nowadays that are like, what is this dress? Um, but back when it released, it was even less popular, I think, because even now I'm starting to see people owning it. I did see a YouTube video not too long ago where somebody was wearing the skirt, and I was very pleasantly surprised to see it in the wild like that. Um, but in 2014, when you have all these other really crazy, over the top, iconic pieces coming out, this dress was never gonna make it. It just simply wasn't. It was a strange choice on AP's part to release this dress in 2014 when there are so many more iconic pieces available at this point. Um, and something that a lot of people in the EGL live journal actually brought up, and this was, I think, very funny, was the birdcage headdress. It's a pearl birdcage headdress. It's very cute, and I just think it seems very impractical. I don't own it. I'm looking for it, and I hope to get my hands on it very soon. But it does just seem very impractical. It doesn't seem like it would sit very nicely on your head because it's pearl, so you know it's going to be kind of heavy, and it's at an angle. I would be afraid to lean over with it on my head. I don't know how durable it is, because I don't know how it's constructed. But as soon as I find out, we will go over it together, I promise. But a lot of people just thought that the birdcage headdress was a little odd, and I can see where they're coming from with that because AP had never released anything like that, and they have not done it since. So I think they may they may have seen some of these opinions online back in the day and been like, maybe we shouldn't do that again. Um, but anyway, so let's get into my final thoughts about Lucienne Dream, before I give you guys kind of the detail shots of this dress so that you can see kind of what I'm talking about, why I think this dress deserves a second chance. I personally find that this dress would be very versatile in most wardrobes. When I got into the fashion in 2015, Lucienne Dream was actually one of the first dresses I saw online. I don't know why that is. I think it's because I was more interested in Gothic at the time. Um, but of course, my wardrobe does not reflect that so much now. It's much more of a classic type wardrobe. Um, but I think it's a really nice piece. I think it's very versatile, especially if you get it within a color scheme that works in your wardrobe. So for me, pink works because a lot of stuff that I own has little hints of pink in it, and then my own like personal wardrobe outside of Lolita definitely has good bits of pink in it as well. As far as the cuts go, I think the basicness of the cuts are actually a strong point for this dress. Since it's so simple, it's very easy to take more over the top items like a hime sleeve blouse and, you know, maybe a bonnet or some other crazy big hair accessory, maybe a whole bunch of little ones. And then of course other accessories to really like zhuzh it up a little bit and kind of make it more over the top. So even though this dress is so basic, it would not be difficult to make it more over the top than it is. And I think that that's, you know, that's a really strong suit of this dress. Some dresses you're very limited in what you can do with it, whereas with this one, you know, the straps are pleated, the bodice is super basic, but it's still a really fun bodice anyway. It's very princessy to me. Honestly, I think the bodice was part of the reason I fell in love with this dress. Even though online people are, you know, people at the time of 2014 when this came out, um, people online hated the bodice of this dress. But honestly, for me, it feels very reminiscent of like Rapunzel's dress in Tangled. I honestly love that about it. But I also think, like I said, you know, it'd be a good staple piece if you're wanting to go just a little more casual, even too, because it's still over the top compared to like normie, non alternative clothing, but it's not so over the top as to cause a scene. And I think that that's, the sign of a really good piece is something that you could wear with normie clothes if you really wanted to. Um, as far as some of the critiques and criticisms, I do agree. I do think it is super basic. And I do think that it's not AP's strongest print. It's not, it's never going to be the most iconic angelic pretty dress, and that's okay. I think that the criticism that it received is valid. Of course, it's valid, but a lot of it, I think, just came from poor quality stock photos, which we still get occasionally, although I've noticed they tend to put the model in the clothing more frequently for the stock photos nowadays, which maybe helps. It's not like the old stock photos where it's just like the dress on a mannequin and then like the head bow on a, mannequin head. Um, so nowadays we tend to get better quality stock photos, and I think if this dress had had that, it would have been advantageous for it. However, I also think that the year that this was released was a big part of the problem. If this dress had come out closer to like 2009, 2010, or even into more modern day AP, if this had released in like 2022, maybe, right before we got really, really heavily into our second sweet boom, I think we're still smack in the middle of it right now, but I could be wrong. Um, but I think if this dress had released either earlier or later than it did, it probably would have done better as far as like community thoughts on it. Um, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe for me. And we will get together again next time. Bye, friends.